my audio is stuffed up again, so we've got to do a soundtrack overlay thing, which I'm rubbish at, but hey. Sorry I didn't do a demo for last month's challenge. I broke my right leg and turning was difficult, so I didn't do it. Hang on a minute, that's not supposed to be happening. Okay, what's on the screen doesn't relate to what I'm saying at the moment. It's just no audio there. Okay, that's thrown me. Right. This month's challenge is a jewellery stand. We're using the things we've done in the last 3 months, i.e. the dibber, a bit of spindle work, the small bowl and the finial. Combining those with some joints between them to make a multi-part piece and stand some jewellery on it. This demo is a bit over the top. I'm designing as I go. Yeah. It's just throwing things together, throwing ideas together. I will put a couple of pictures on the Facebook page of simpler ones that you could possibly choose instead. Principles are the same. So I'm starting out with this bit of ash log, which is literally a piece of 4-inch branch. I've chopped 2 into bowl blanks and some into spindle blanks, and then I've got a few bits here which I probably won't use. This is 2 of the finials I was supposed to be cutting for last month's tutorial. By the time I got my leg good enough to cut anything, it was too late. I have a selection of finials that I use as shape ideas, and we'll be coming to that later. So this is my 6 component parts. This is what I ended up with. Nothing like I had in my mind when I started, but it's what we got to. And this is where we start. We've got a base. It's got to be heavy enough to hold up jewellery on it. Something to hold it up in the air. A cross piece to put some rings on. And a bowl to hang some earrings off. And behind them itself. Hang on a sec. Let's okay. You just saw me showing that the faceplate is way too big for this small bowl. So instead, I'll put a Forstner bit into there, go straight onto the chuck. Let's get on with some cutting. Start by facing off. This is going to be the bottom of my base. So the bit I'm working on now will go onto the chuck in a minute. And before it does, I will clean it up, square it up, and polish it, because I don't want to come back to this. So this will be completely finished by the time I turn it around on the chuck. It's going to have a slight dish into it, so that it stands on the edge rather than the whole of the base. That stops it rocking so much if it warps a little bit. So there's a slight dish. Then I chuck a mortise in there. Before I do that, this bit is the pith. It's the edge of the pith, the hard woody part of the pith rather than the spongy part. And it can be nice for colour, it won't do any harm. And usually I'll leave it there. In this particular piece I take most of it out. You see I have those 2 bits on there. Outside edge, which reference up through. So I use a ruler and a pencil to size my mortise. I made a jig on here recently for somebody in this group, I can't remember who, but I don't use it myself even though I made it. I'm just used to using a ruler and pencil, always have done. Okay, so I take the middle out and then I use a skew to just give myself a dovetail on that edge because there's dovetail jewels going on. And while you weren't looking, I sanded that, Yorkshire gritted, and wax polished it. So now we've got the top side of the base, and my inspiration for this was those Diablo things that spin on a piece of string. It's not a shape I would normally use, but using different shapes is always worth trying. Gotta say I probably won't be using this shape again, but what the hell. If you don't experiment, you'll never learn. So what I'm going for is a curve. I want a slight lip on the very base of this and a flat on the top of it for the spindle to reference against, to fit against. Other than that, I don't really have a brief. It's just cut it, see where it goes. The reason I want a slight lip is because I'm going to have a brim on the top bowl, and I just want to suggest that there's a rim on the bottom of this one as well. Trouble with designing what you cut is you've got to keep stopping and looking, thinking, changing what you're cutting. It gets a bit slow. It's faster to cut the second one or the third one of a sequence because you already know what you're going to cut. You know where to put the tool. Get my plinth there, and now I need to put a mortise in. I'm using a 10mm Forstner bit. All my mortises on my general purpose stuff are 10mm or 6mm. That means that stuff is interchangeable, and when I make finials I can make a set of them and use them on various different things. Obviously if I'm making something heavy duty like a stool or something, then I'll use a bigger mortise, but for general purpose stuff it's 10 or 6. So there's the base. It's as you can see, there's a little rim around the bottom of it. It's an upside down bowl, except this one isn't hollowed out because I want the weight in it. So, as the chuck's on there, let's go straight onto the top now. And again, the design is being created as I cut. Not a great move, and this piece of wood wasn't the perfect shape. It wasn't the same as the bottom. Although it was half a branch, it was an oval branch, not a round one. And just because I can, I've got some timber to waste, and why not? I'm going for a tenon on this one instead of a mortise. So we'll put the tenon on there, we'll take it off later. Obviously my bandsaw, I don't cut the circles on the bandsaw, it wears the blades out. I cut corners off and then use the lathe to take them down to what I call a pillbox blank. So the first job is to get those rough edges out and if the audio would work, you'd hear lots of not clunking, but you'd hear the fact that I'm turning quite a lot of air now. But I find putting the piece that I want to reference from on the headstock or in my eyeline helps me cut something similar. This isn't going to be the same, I don't want it the same. But I want one to suggest the other. Just tidy up the dovetail on the edge of that tenon. Again, with a skew used in the scraper mode. And I've decided I want it that size, not the full depth. So I'll just be loosening that bottom bit. Now this is going to be a deliberate funnel. So I'll put a hole in there now because then I can use that as a reference mark when I'm hollowing. So it's a deliberate funnel because the spindle's going to pass all the way up through this. Not in one piece, but it is going to pass all the way up through this. Get that bit out of the way before I stab my elbow. And now I've sanded, Yorkshire gritted and waxed the outside of this bit before I span it over. As you can see, that face isn't particularly level, so we're going to first of all level that off and then empty the dish part. This bowl is an OG shape. It's not a shape I like anymore. It feels old-fashioned to me. I've got a number of old wood turning stuff and this just suggests 1970s to me, so I don't tend to cut this shape very often. But it's appropriate here, so I use it. I'm using a 3/8 bowl gouge because it's a small bowl. I'd use a 3/8 on a big bowl as well, but I'd also use a 1/2 inch on a big bowl. And everything is done with my right hand. My left hand is just literally resting there, putting some pressure on to keep it on the tool there, stop it bouncing. That's all it's doing. As I cut down in there, I can find the start of that hole. That means I'm approaching the right depth. Okay, so that's done. Now we're going to use my indexing jig system. I have made a video on how I made this indexing jig. You can find that on the tools and things playlist on my YouTube channel. This has got a 60 hole ring around the middle, or the inside ring, and 72 on the outside ring. They are then painted up so that I can easily spot groups of them. And 60 is obviously based on a clock, minutes, and naturally divides into 5. I'm also using my drill post here, which holds my drill nice and central and means that I'm always drilling at the same angle and the same height. And with the indexing jig, I'm also going to be drilling equally spaced holes. So I pull the pin out the back, rotate it to the next point, put the pin back in, and it's locked and ready to rock. As I said, there is a YouTube video on my channel showing how I made that and the base at the bottom, which is based on a steel rule, funnily enough. I'm going to speed this up because you really don't want to watch 12 holes being drilled. If you like the video, please put your thumbs up. It does help the channel and it makes me feel good, makes it feel as though I've not wasted my time making these. And 12 holes will obviously accommodate 6 pairs of earrings. I can't see why anybody would want more than 6 pairs of earrings, so it should be plenty. Ha 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 ha. Okay, so you can see the 2 bowls together there. They're too close together at the moment, so I'm making this little riser block go between them. Little stem. And this will obviously have 2 10mm 10ins, one at each end, which will go into the mortises I've already drilled into those pieces. You also see now it's stopped. I've drilled a hole through that as well. I've got 2 arms to go into this to hold rings, and it's much easier to drill a hole whilst it's in a square block format than it is to drill through a dowel. So drill it first, then cut it. And again, I'm making this design up on the fly, which does catch me. You'll see in a bit. It's much better if you know exactly where you're cutting. I'm using a spanner as a sizing tool to make sure that I've got a 10mm 10 in there. And I'll do exactly the same on the other end, but I've got to step it in a little bit because the stab centre is driving outside of 10mm. It's I think it's a 19mm stab I got there. That's easy enough to cut off later. This is where I really fall down because I've got no idea what shape this is going to be. I know I need a wide bit to fit the platform I've got on the bottom. I need a wide bit where the arms are going to go through. and I don't need a wide bit at the top because I haven't left a very big platform there, but it needs to be a bit wider. So I put a little bead on that very bottom, and then I sort of figure out what I'm going to do next, where I'm going to cut. Didn't even put pencil lines on, that would have been helpful. The thing is, if I made a second one of this, I would take what I've done, correct any errors in my design, and then make a storyboard. Storyboards are very, very useful things, even if you're only making a couple of something, so that you remember what's what, where it's going, any important measurements can be put on there. I'm going for a fairly simple cove there. Don't know if you spotted it, but I did. I didn't actually know which sort of cove I was going to be doing until I was getting close to the bottom. Now this is where I get really caught out. I really don't know what shape to do here. I'm hesitant, my tool's in the wrong angle, and it bites me. Had I known what cut I was going for, and not wave the tool around while I was thinking about it, I wouldn't have had that happen. I'm not saying that it's always the cause of a catch. You can get catches any inattentive moment, but not having a design in your head set, ready to go, is almost always going to cause you a problem. The catch isn't actually fatal. They're not often are fatal. Normally it's just a question of a slight redesign. In this one I just get a smaller tool and just tidy up damage in there. And I was always going to run a skew across the midsection anyway, because there's a hole through it and you cannot sand successfully where you've got a hole through the spindle. So by using a skew I can get a perfect cut and I won't need to sand it. Just like that. Again, you don't need to see me messing about with sanding this, so I'll do that off camera. Sand it, and in this case I use a wet stick because it's a spindle. You'll see a bit of that later on. A rough fit of my bits together. I don't want to push them all the way in, I just get an idea how it looks. Yeah. So this is the arms. I'm doing the arms as one single piece because it's quicker to do that. If I loaded each half onto the lathe and then did it, then it slows you down, and also you're more likely to get one of them vastly different to the other one. If you do them as one piece and then cut them in half, then there's a very good chance they'll be quite symmetrical. Okay, so what I've done is I've used the parting tool and I've gone down to 15mm. Reason for that is I measured my wife's smallest ring and it was 18mm. So if I take this down to 15, stick a little button on the end at 15mm, the ring will go over it. Take the bar down a couple mil more, down to say 12, then the ring will go over there and sit on the bar without sliding off. That's the idea. Again, I'm faffing about, I'm calculating design in my head. I should have had this as a storyboard. Only now have I decided it's going to be 6 inches or 150mm long. So I find the middle, mark a centimetre either side of that, and that will fit inside the upright spindle. It's not important they meet in the middle because there's enough strength in that tenon anyway. More important that the arms are the same length from that point outwards to the end. So I'm using a parting tool, just knocking it down, and I will use my spanner as well, same as I did on the other tenons. So that's 10mm, the outside the bar is 15mm, and I need to put a button on the end of that and then just take the rest of it down to 12mm or thereabouts. Using the skew because it's the easiest tool to do this with. Mark the middle ready for cutting with a saw later on, and sand it up. This is the 120, this is the rough sanding if you like. Get it going. Now I could cheat and say I intended to do this, but I didn't. At that stage I looked at it and I thought, oh, I could do with a fillet in there. It's just effectively a V-cut, but it's a good time to do it in reality because you don't want to sand the edge of a small sharp edge. It'll be gone in no time. So do the coarse sanding before you do the detail and then come back with the finer sandpapers or abrasive cloth as it is. Taking that up to 250. Just take the ends around a bit more. Can't go all the way because this is under pressure. There's a spring in that step center pushing back against the tailstock. Now I use my Carnauba wax stick. This is a very hard wax. It's great for doing these spindles really quickly. And it's a very long lasting hard wearing wax. You need to do it with high speed though because you've got to melt that wax, and it's I think it's 60 degrees centigrade melting point. Whatever, it's not normal temperature for human contact. So that's it. Arms are cut in half and installed. It's kind of the effect I was going for, but not 100%. So now I can try my finials on the top and decide what I'm going to go with. Now that's actually quite a sensible finial, because that could also, with a little bit of modification, act as a third ring stand. You can drop rings on top of it and it'll stop them falling off and all over the floor. However, at this point I went and had a cup of coffee and I saw a bit of the Olympics and I got warped. I looked at it and I thought, that looks like a little cauldron, an Olympic flame in the middle. So rather than do a finial, I'm going to go for a large flame in the middle of that bowl, making the bowl useless. And yeah, I blame the Olympics. Right, I need to do a quick apology here. The more astute amongst you will have noticed that I'm turning in sandals. Don't ever turn in sandals. Wear proper protective shoes. As I said at the beginning, I've just broken my leg. It's only just come out of the boot. And my foot is still quite swollen and I cannot get my workshop shoes on. But I was determined to make this tutorial. Didn't want to miss 2 months in a row. And the wood I'm working with is lightweight, small pieces. Chance of crushing my toe are quite small. So I took the chance. But it's not a good thing. So if you see those sandals, don't take it as a suggestion of a way of working. It's not. It's just circumstance. So anyway, that's half a cove there, makes a point. Simple. The bowl it's going into is actually at the other end of the leg, out of sight from you, but it's in my eye line. And I'm making this up as I go along, figuring out the size, and just really cutting to what's in my imagination. There's no measurement, there's no spec. But because I can see that bowl and I can see what I've got in front of me, I can modify it accordingly. I'm pointing at the bottom there saying I want a small fillet there, even though this is going to be inside a bowl and mostly hidden. Having it a couple of mil above the bowl, just floating, just makes it look a bit better. And God knows this whole thing does need something to make it look a bit better, because it's, yeah, my imagination wasn't working well. But I've also decided it's too big, so I'm just knocking the edge off of that and then I'll reshape from there. This bit is actually going to be fitting inside of the 10mm tenon of the upright post. It's going to be going through the top bowl into that tenon. So obviously it can't be a 10mm tenon on this one, so I'm going to be using a 6mm, which I'll be cutting right at the end because 6mm isn't particularly strong and I want that chunk of wood behind me before I finish sanding this and finishing it off. Incidentally, if I was doing a proper finial, then I would still be using a piece of wood about this size, because I want that chunk in the chuck nice and secure, and I will turn it down to finial size and work my way back to the chuck as I go. We just take that down to, it's about 12mm that centre at the moment. Use a skew to just tidy up the bottom of that, because I can get it in there. Could use a small detail gouger if you wanted to. Whatever will fit. Just clean that feathering up and then cut my fillet. It's not a big one, a couple of mils all. Just floats that flame up off of the base. Okay, so I use a 6mm spanner in the same way as I use a 10mm spanner to get my size. Part this off and see how it looks on the top. That's it, thank you for watching. As I said earlier, please put your thumbs up if you enjoyed it, or tell me why you didn't enjoy it if you didn't. And it's my little sort of humanoid figure, my Olympic flame tribute.